Another question that I get asked a lot is, what do you do when you receive negative feedback, whether it's from your spouse, family, friends, or strangers? What do you do? How do you respond? Well, the most important thing to remember is not to get defensive, because if you get defensive, then people just naturally assume that there's a reason why you're getting defensive. Never mind the fact that, it never occurs to them that maybe they asked a boneheaded question. They just assume you have something that causes you to be defensive. And a lot of times when someone responds negatively or they're asking something and it's not from a genuine curiosity, it's because they question whether they can do it. A lot of times it's not just about ignorance and just not knowing what it's like. Spouses will say that too. They'll say, well, how do you do it? What are you going to do all day? It's the whole you're home eating bonbons kind of perception. And what we know is completely false. If you're a mom and you've been home for a day, that is always false. And it's the same way for homeschooling moms, because now you're doing everything you did as a stay-at-home mom, and now you're doing it as a teacher as well. So a lot of work and sacrifice goes into that, and it's never appreciated by those people who don't see you doing it all day, every day. Okay? So spouses are included in that. So a lot of it is ignorance and just not understanding what it is that you do. And some of it is guilt and their own questioning of their own tolerance and their own patience. I get a lot of, well, I could never do that. I could never do that. I don't have the patience for that. And I always say never, because life has a way of putting you in a position for that very challenge, that very thing that you thought you could never do. Life has a way of presenting it to you. And then and in a way that you don't have an alternative. So you have to face it head on. So I always say never. My cousin was one of those never saying, I could never do that, and I'm not as organized as you, and I'm not patient like you, or whatever. I'm not patient, but whatever they think. She was one of those people, and I wasn't trying to convert her. I was just sharing my homeschooling journey. And, I would post on Facebook and things like that. And you never know how many people are watching you and secretly a little jealous, secretly a little annoyed, but really wondering how you're doing it. And annoyed that you can do it and they can't. Whether it's because you're, like me, a single mom and you can homeschool. A very good friend of mine brought up a very good point. She said, people really don't like it when we do it, because she's a single homeschooling mom too. People don't really like it when we do it, because then they truly don't have an excuse. When you have a better financial standing, or you have a support system, or whatever the case is, and you don't want to do it, or you think you can't do it, and then there are people who are worse off than you and they're not making excuses, it's interesting. So those types of people will tend to be a little attack-ish. They'll attack you a little bit. They'll question you. They'll make a lot of excuses. They'll tell you, why you shouldn't do it. It's one thing when they say they can't do it. Okay, fine. You can't do it? All right, well, okay, let's move on. But when they turn around and they say why you can't do it, well, don't say I can't do it, because obviously I am doing it. And don't tell me why I shouldn't do it, because you're not me, and you're not raising my children, and you're not in my family, and you're not married to my husband, or, you're not in my shoes. I've been in a position where, and I still am, where I need a lot of support, and people don't understand the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I touched on that in another, I don't know if I'm going to put it in the same video or another portion of the video, but I touched on that too. I only have one shot at this parenting gig, and I have 2 children, and they are the air I breathe. They are like my right arm and left arm. They are my limbs. and when you question what I'm doing, obviously, that I think I'm doing in the best of my ability and what I think is best for my children, when someone questions that, you wonder where they're coming from. They don't love my children like I do. So, what is their motivating factor for saying what they're saying? A lot of times, if someone is supporting you in whatever way, if they're supporting you financially, they're wondering why they need to support you in order for you to do this amazing thing. I've had that happen. They wonder why you get to do that when they don't get to do it. I've heard that too. And it's based on their perception. Like, they think you're home eating bonbons, and they want that. And you're like, well, try it for one day and you'll realize how difficult it is. And then you'll go back to your regular job, right? It's the same thing as, being a stay-at-home mom. They just don't get it. And then there are people who, on Facebook groups or, in mom groups at the playground or whatever, hearing that you are choosing a different path that is not a no-brainer, head tucked down, following the masses type of response to education. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Like I said, I'm a public school girl, and I don't have anything wrong or against the public school or private school system. But homeschooling is something different. And to do anything that's a little bit different or against the average norm it takes some getting used to. And when people hear that you're doing it, it makes them question themselves. It makes them question their own response to their children and their schedules and their priorities. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with what you said. There have been many times where I've been in a conversation with someone. I'm not preaching. I'm not judging. I'm not talking about, well, you should do it. I never say that. I'm just talking about what I'm doing. Over here on my side of the street, this is what I'm doing with my children. Or I'm answering someone else's question, and then a third person will come in and get defensive. Or I had one woman, she was like, well, that doesn't mean I don't love my children. I was like, who said you don't love your kids? I wasn't even talking to her. I wasn't even talking to her. I said, who said you didn't love your kid? Okay, you love your kids. Who are you talking to? And she just went off. And that has nothing to do with me. That has nothing to do with the conversation we had. That has everything to do with her. And you have to remember that when people are giving you that kind of negativity, it's not you, it's them. And you have to discern the difference. And I've had people, from all sides of the spectrum. I've had people bow to me. I remember I took the kids to Costco one time, and the guy at the door was checking my receipt, and he asked, it must have been a weekday or something, he asked if the kids weren't in school, and I said, no, we homeschool. And at the beginning, I didn't like admitting it. I'll be honest. I had a hard time admitting it because it always ended up being a conversation. And it still does. But I'm a lot stronger in my response, so people don't tend to, and if we're busy or whatever, people won't engage. But it always ended up being a conversation. And sometimes it still does, where I'm just like, oh, here we go. Grab a coffee. We're going to be here for a while, It always ends up being a conversation. But in this particular instance, I said, oh yeah, we homeschool. And he goes, he put his hands together and he bowed. He said, I commend you. I'll never forget that. He said he used to teach, and I guess he was a retired teacher. And he said, anyone who can do it, whether it's your own or other people's children, is an amazing thing. And he knows, he said, he's very well read, he's still very with it, and he knows what the school systems are like these days, and some are fantastic and some are not all they're cracked up to be, and some, there's a lot of, red tape and a lot of, the rules are changing for teachers, for students, for parents, across the board. And, there are a lot of great teachers out there, but there are some questionable ones too. And, it's like that with parents too. There's a lot of good parents, and then, there's a couple really bad seeds. So he knew all of that, and he said, that's a really cool thing, and, keep it up, and, stay strong. I guess that's true. You need to stay strong. And so, you have people like that who really just make your day and give you a lot of confidence in your decision. And I said it before, but I'll say it again. When your conviction is strong, it's not that it won't waver, and that things in life won't make you question this decision, and that you won't be put in positions where you really wonder, should I be doing this? Can I still do this? And then you look at your children and you think, I've got one shot at this. I've got one try to do it right. And I feel like this is it. And when you feel that strongly, and you've been through situations where you've had to fight, and you've had to prove yourself, and you've had to defend this decision, it gets easier. It gets easier and easier. It's when you question that choice and your conviction is not that strong that a lot of people shake and wobble. And so I would say, get to a point where you know without a doubt that you're doing the right thing. And that's not to say you have to do it forever, but you just, today, this week, this month, this year, this is the best decision for us. And do it right. I mean, be wise about it. Do everything you're supposed to be doing. Meet all the state rules and regulations, all the laws, dot your I's and cross your T's, and just do everything you're supposed to do, and eliminate the doubt of people around you. Eliminate the questions. People want to know what life is like in your homeschooling neck of the woods. Do a little vlog. And you don't have to put it anywhere. You don't have to put it on YouTube. You can send it to your in-laws. You can send it to your hubby at work. You can you can post it on your personal Facebook page and just show people, what life is like. You can do whatever you need to do to eliminate those questions and those doubts from people in your circle. And just always pay attention to where they're coming from. Not everyone that questions or comments or offers opinions on our lives are coming from a good place. And I've had to learn that the hard way. Not everyone's looking out for your best interests. And those people who truly back you up, that's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I've had some really, really good homeschooling moms and friends. My homeschool, my single mom sisters, who they get it. They get it. And that is a remarkable thing, to understand, not only to homeschool, but to homeschool on your own, and to fight for the right to be able to do so is huge. And those of us who have fought really hard take it very seriously. And when you've been in a position where you don't take this type of thing, your child's education, for granted, someone making some little snarky comment on Facebook, or saying something to you in a park, that's not going to ruffle your feathers. It just isn't. You'll get a thicker skin. So don't worry about those people who might throw a little negativity your way. When your decision is yours, and your family's, and what's best for your children, that's all that matters.